I was on the phone today with Marlon Sanders again. Marlon, shout out. What's up, dude?
What's happening?
And we were just talking a little bit about the way our businesses and lives and marketing and all these things change over time after you've been in the same business industry for many years. And I just have a question. There's a question I want to pose to you and the audience. I have my own opinion on this, but basically I was talking with Marlon, and Marlon was talking about how for many, many, many years he did a lot of public speaking, and he'd get up on stage, and he is a extremely dynamic and interesting and unusual presenter. He's very loud. He's very eccentric. He's very off the wall. He has a funny accent, extremely memorable. And this is one of the things I love about him. And we were talking about this, and we were talking about webinars and doing Zoom calls. And he's like, I just don't think people want to hear me stand up and swing my arms all over the place and yell. I'm like, I think that's exactly what they want to hear, Marlon. And so anyway, the topic came up of the differences and the similarities between doing like a live Zoom webinar and doing a stage presentation. And is it different? Is it the same? And do you need to fit in more in webinars? Do you need to be more what people are going to expect in a webinar or a Zoom environment? So many people are afraid of sticking out in the crowd or looking weird or not being liked. And this is the case from stage or during a webinar. And so what do you think, Joshua? How do you think people should really be more focused on fitting in and showing up as people will expect? Or do you think they should be more focused on exaggerating their eccentricities?
I don't know that either extreme is the right call personally for me, but I do believe that being who you are and being authentically and unapologetic for it is key. And I don't care what format or forum you're in. But the question that I would have for you, and really more about like your conversation with Marlon, is what prompted him to mention that to you? What was it that he felt like needed to shift because of like, what was he coming up against that was coming up for him?
Oh, well, we had like, we've talked a few times in the last few days. We had like an hour and a half long conversation earlier today. And so this was going to be the topic I was going to suggest for today's live stream, actually, which is a conversation that you and I have had and on occasion struggled with, I think, which is the question of, should I be going wide with my message, and should I create a message that goes wide and reaches out to lots of people, or should I be more focused and more niched and more hyper niched on the exact person, the exact target, right? Do I want to go wider, or do I want to go super narrow? And when you have a marketing message in particular, marketing business philosophies, methodologies that are absolutely adaptable to different professions, different careers, different businesses, different business models, different business types, is it more advantageous to try to create a wide marketing message, or is it more advantageous to create a very narrow focused one? And truthfully, I don't think there is one answer to that question either.
Yeah, but what was it that he said that when it prompted him to ask you, like, well, do you think I should, like, I don't think people want to see me, waving my arms and, yelling like a madman on a Zoom call. What was it? I mean, like, was it
a little bit about doing live presentations and feeling drained from them, and the difference between doing that in person at a seminar, which not a lot of people are doing right now. And there's also been, every industry experiences this, but there's been contraction, obviously, in the seminar speaking industry since COVID and the pandemic. But there's been contraction in that in the past that wasn't pandemic related too. Industries go through expansion and contraction periods.
For sure.
And we were just talking about the specific skills that we're good at, things that make us a lot of money, things that really give us a lot of juice, a lot of energy, a lot of power. And we were talking about the difference between speaking in person and online. And what we uncovered was that Marlon was, I hope you don't mind me talking about you like this, wasn't as energized by doing webinar presentations as he used to be by doing live presentations. And I was like, why is that? And it turns out that he's sitting down, kind of being boring, he's not getting pumped. He's not getting excited. And that's very much his presentation style. And so I suggested to him that he turn up the volume on his weirdness and his loudness and do presentations on Zoom the way he used to do them in live. And I suggested that might bring him a lot more energy. And
yeah, and I mean, another thing for sure is if he got a standing desk and can stand up, because I know that for me, when I'm like on creatively and on stage and speaking in that, but I'm walking around, I'm pacing, I'm actually standing up and able to communicate in that regard, and it is taking some getting used to for me to always be sitting at the same time and keep the energy strong and keep engaged. But I will say that when I'm on and I find the right subject matter that I'm passionate about, that I want to make a difference and make an impact with, I'm as pumped as I am after a Zoom call as I am after a live presentation for a couple of hours. And likewise, I can be drained by either, but it has to do with the dynamicism of who I'm being in that moment and letting that authenticity pour free.
Yeah, I'll tell you that one thing that I loved for a while was doing teleseminars out before webinars existed. I really enjoyed doing teleseminars outside. And I mean, nobody could see. I could walk around the lawn. You know, it was good. And it was my wireless phone connectivity was never a problem. Whereas living in a old brick house, internet connectivity outside, unless everything's routed right, was always a problem. So I find that standing up makes a huge difference for me in terms of my energy and my presentation ability. Being able to walk around is great. One thing I've always dreamed of that I've never really acted on is creating an outside studio, I guess partially because computers aren't mostly built for inclement weather, right? And I live in a 4-season environment here. And so, but it would be really cool to have like an outdoor waterproof, weatherproof live stream studio. That'd be pretty rad. I guess that's called an iPhone with a case, right?
Yeah, I'm just kind of curious. What I mean, and maybe you don't know the answer to this, but was it just Marlon getting drained and not feeling that energy pump, or was it also reflected in the attendees, where, like, what I'm getting at is that oftentimes in person you feed off of the energy of the people there in addition to your own energy and in addition to being there, and that definitely takes some getting used to, no matter whether you're standing, moving, whatever, of knowing that you've got people that are engaged and with you and giving you energy, and that definitely pumps up the volume, so to speak.
I've been on several Zoom meetings versus Zoom webinars. And I've been on several Zoom meetings where I was one of 20, 30, 50, 100 different video feeds coming into it. As a matter of fact, I did the coolest Zoom meeting the day before Halloween. Have you ever heard of it's a comedy magic show on Netflix called Magic for Humans? And it's great. It's hilarious. It's family friendly. It's cool. And, it's classic, magician. He does street magician style stuff. So he's a cameraman following him around, and he catches people on the street and, pitches them with a joke and then does a trick and, and so on. But, so he started doing Magic for Humans group shows, and he had this guy, amazing. Okay, so first of all, he lined up like a dozen shows around Halloween. Second of all, each one of them was $25 to attend. Third of all, they were almost all sold out when I went to sign up for one 2.5 weeks in advance. And fourth of all, we attended, and there were over 500 live attendees on the one we were on.
And was that a meeting or was that a webinar? It
was a Zoom meeting with showing everybody else's video. And and a lot of the show was spent bringing other people on and putting other people in the spotlight on video. And so Kevin Thompson has done some of this with his roundtables, and Yannick Silver has done some of this with his Mega Minds and his Cosmic Brainstorm sessions. And so this is something that wasn't available previously with like GoToWebinar and all this kind of stuff. Like
the
getting
technology
50 or 100 or more people to be able to show up from their phone or from their computer and say hi on video stream to the entire community. That's new. And it's highly interactive. It's very cool. Anyway, subject lines.
Yeah, just change gears a little bit. Should we tee this up, like how this came about?
Yes. Do you want to do that?
Sure.
Great idea.
Well, we were talking about yesterday with some of our NPod clients, and we were talking about drawing inspirations for your live streams, for your emails, for your stories about everyday life, and challenging yourself to look at anything interesting. When you're eavesdropping in on a conversation, you hear something funny or whatever that just sticks out, and it's like an earworm for you. And like, how could I tie this into a story? How could I tie this into an email that I want to send to my list?
That's a good subject line, Joshua. Like an earworm.
Like an earworm. Like a virgin. Ooh.
Like a virgin earworm.
Touched for the very first time.
That's right.
In the ear.
That's right.
And so we were talking about this, and you were talking about how you love to listen, like you're not like trying to think up subject lines and hooks and angles for your marketing. You're listening for what people are saying and what stands out for you, and then how can you attach it? And that triggered a thought for me based upon, like, in my early days, I used to challenge myself every time I saw anything that kind of like stood out as different, or even if it wasn't different, like, how could I twist this into something that I could use in my industry? And how could I adapt this over here? And I probably got the idea, I believe, from Jay Abraham, probably, where he said, like, like cross section over wherever, and start thinking about it. So I used to challenge myself to get good at that.
Yeah.
And then I remembered when you and I were in New Zealand for like 10 days, and we went all over the place, and you got me started on, like, well, that'd be a good subject line, and that'd be a good subject line. And so by the end of it, like I remember taking 2 pictures. One was Area 51, and it was a store. It was, I think, a fashion boutique store in New Zealand, and it had an Area 51. And I was thinking about it from, for two reasons I was thinking about it. One, from the alien, Area 51 appeal, particularly in the US. But then I also remember at the time, I think it was Mike Long. Do you remember Mike Long?
Uh-huh.
I think he had a marketing company or a media company called Area 51.
I wouldn't be the least bit surprised.
And I wanted to send that to him. I mean, this was like, shit, that was
a bunch of years ago.
Yeah, it was like 2007 or 2008, something like that. And so I wanted to send it to him, and so that was one idea. And then, like, that a whole promotion could be driven around that in Area 51. And the second thing that I snapped a picture of that is still my caller ID when you call me to today was when we were in a like an espresso coffee shop on the back of the what do they call that, the special brewing, the steamer and all that with the coffee maker,
the espresso machine.
Yeah, the espresso machine. Yeah, they had a sign on it that says, "Drink coffee, do stupid shit faster."
That's right.
And it was like this old, 1950s type motif. and picture. And I was like, that's hilarious. Plus, like it just fit you, and it was the time. So like to this day, when you call me, that's the caller ID picture that comes up.
That's right. I'm glad that's how you think of me.
Well, you love coffee.
I love doing stupid shit really fast.
Yep.
No,
and you're
true.
uniquely yourself.
It's true. It's true. No, it was very funny. And there's so much inspiration all around us all the time. But sometimes you just need to train your brain to spot it.
Yeah.
Right.
I'd say all the time. You just need to learn how to tune into it. And like all of a sudden, like you can never run out of things to talk about. And that's interesting.
That's right.
I think it was Gary Halbert that talked about like he was big on opening sales letters up and his newsletter up with something interesting. And he was talking about like one of his openings was, did you know that a dime has something like, I forget the exact number, 952 dimples, or I'm totally making that up, but that was one of his opening things. And then he talked about this little book called Who Knew, which I immediately went out and bought. And it's great because you flip open and you're like, all right, how can I adapt this? How could I use this for something?
Yep.
And it works great.
Just weird. So yeah, I like to listen for weird ideas. Now, anybody who's ever studied the art of writing a video sales letter has probably bumped into John Benson or someone that knocked off John Benson. And video sales letters is not where this originated. However, the idea of using a pattern interrupt at the beginning of your video presentation is a great example of a way to catch people off guard with something interesting, bizarre, unusual. And you do need to circle back fairly quickly to bring your actual topic, the actual hook, the actual thing that is of interest back in. Otherwise, you will lose people.
Right. It can't be a novelty. It's got to be a useful tool to bridge.
Did you know that 1 in 2,379 turtles are actually born with 7 legs? This is a 7-legged turtle. What does a 7-legged turtle have to do with email marketing? I'll tell you in just a moment. But the real question that I want to know is, where's the 8th leg? Right? And then you can go into it, right? And so, oh, great. Thanks, Jack. Jack's jumping into action. Jack says, here are 2 of my successful subject lines to people who did not know me very well. 1, average people don't do this. And 2, are you crazy? If they know me, here are 2 that I use. You and I go way back, and this is different. Awesome. Awesome, Jack. Very, very cool. Yeah, so we're thinking about doing a little subject line challenge here. And we might do one today if there are enough people that are interested in throwing their hat in the ring. Or maybe we'll just talk about doing a subject line challenge and see how many people might be interested in the future. But what I noticed is that, I learned fairly early on that you can get a lot of attention with weird ideas. And you don't always get the right type of attention. But if you're good at choosing the right ideas and you're clear on who your market actually is, and you have a great offer that's perfectly attuned to that market, weird ideas or the idea of a pattern interrupt is a great way of grabbing unusual attention by sending something out that most people, most business owners, most list owners in your market would never possibly send. And again, this can be used at the beginning of a video sales letter and often is due to John's training, right, and software. However, it can also be used in your subject lines. One of my best subject lines of all time, two of them that are most often referenced by Matt Gill is baboon ass for breakfast. And the other one is hard poor corn. Hard poor corn. And it totally gets people's attention every single time. And those are just 2 of, millions and millions and millions of examples. So,
there's something behind this that I think is important to bring up, and that's the hook. That is the big idea, the angle behind the subject line and or the positioning of the
behind the shock and awe,
Yeah, I mean, like, baboon asked for breakfast was so powerful, not just because of the subject line, but because of the whole story.
Right.
And the way that it was and that's much, much more than just a simple set of subject lines to get somebody's attention to open your email.
That's right.
I mean, it's a cohesive presentation or story. I mean, it's really like a complete story, that the mythology that brings people in. And that is, at its core, storytelling.
Yeah.
And that's the way, like, the moral of the story gets passed down from generation to generation, and in myths and in fairy tales.
Yep. Yeah. It's a subject line is one little piece to the one little part to a much larger painting, a much larger canvas, and that canvas involves the body of the email. It involves the way and the links that you link up in the email to where you're sending people next. It involves the landing page, the opt-in page, and or the sales page, or otherwise, or the content that you're driving to. And all of these are pieces. But the thing is, you can't learn them all at once. You have to learn these one at a time. And after you learn how to use, mastery over each one, then you really bring it together into a masterpiece.
What's up, Max?
Max could hit us with some good subject lines, I bet.
Yeah, he's got some gift of creative gab and humor. There was just something that you said. Oh, I think that if you get brilliant on the hook, on the big idea, on the angle behind the story, that makes up for a lot of other stuff that isn't perfect.
Right.
And if you have that right, then you can, because that is the kind of the unifying force, if you will, that brings everything together. And you can get away with a mediocre subject line, or not the best landing page. But and so, like, in thinking about what you just said, in terms of it's hard to do all of that at once. Yes, it definitely, for a cohesive presentation that works. But if you focus on one thing, and that is getting the hook right, getting that big idea right, the story behind the story right, that then would naturally leads to other stuff that you can test, that you can enhance, that you can tweak, and it gets better and better and better and better.
That's right. So we're thinking about training people and teaching people how to get better at writing subject lines, and ultimately better at all of their marketing. But starting with subject lines, we're thinking about doing a little subject line challenge where we'd have a bunch of people compete for the best subject lines, and ultimately maybe run a vote, right? And have
a split test even.
We could split test them and come back with some actual results on, who won out of the top three. But it's tricky with that, because testing subject lines is one thing, but are they subject lines that we're testing as a result of a pre-written email, or are they just subject lines out of the blue and we're just testing for opens, right? Hard to say.
No, I think it would have to be, like, to be fair, it would have to be a particular promotion and email so that it would make sense either way.
Right,
and right. that whoever's coming up with these different ideas to test would have the background, the story behind the story of, like, what might work.
That's right. Nice. Max says, there I was on the corner of Walk and Don't Walk, surrounded by 25 of the most beautiful women. Click here. Good show, Max. Good show.
That's a line from some joke that I remember. The where are you? Kid calls his parents up and he's lost, and they say, well, where are you? Well, I'm on the corner of Walk and Don't Walk.
That's right. That's funny. Very cool. Joshua, I have to admit something. I did not eat lunch today.
So it's probably time for you to get your blood sugar up.
Crashing. I told you need to eat some food at some point. How about you?
I was actually pretty good today, because my 12:30 meeting was we were both like completely spent, and we decided to call it. So I actually had a chance to eat a proper meal before this. So
extraordinary. Job well done. Job well done.
Right.
Awesome, guys. Well, I think we're going to probably wrap for the day. Let us know if you want to get more info on the subject line challenge by typing in subject line in the comments below, and we'll be sure to get you an invite if and when that goes live.
Yeah, including if there are some tweaks or some suggestions that you might have to, like we were just kicking around, like how would we do it? What would be the judgments? What would be the, how could we, make it fair for everybody, that type of thing. So yeah, I would love to know your thoughts on it.
Awesome. Well, enjoy your weekend. Have a fabulous Friday evening.
Sounds like
you guys in a couple of days. Over and
out.
All right.
Thanks, man.